All right. So we're going to get started with lifting and moving. We're going to be done with lecture for lunch, right? I will give you guys the option. I can keep Zoom going if you guys want to watch it. I know you can't be here physically. We do have masks. We do have gloves. If you feel comfortable, we can do some kind of playtime with you guys actually doing the backboarding, all of that jazz. If not, it's okay. I understand I'm not going to require it, but you do have a lab day next week. So same rules will apply then. We'll have gloves, we'll have masks. We encourage it, but it's your discretion. Okay, so we'll just put that there. All right, so when it comes to lifting and moving, guys, you're gonna have to do this every single day, every single call. All right, a lot of people don't understand the intensity of the physical aspect that goes into being a first responder. There's a lot of things that go into considering how and when and how you should be moving these patients. Okay, what do you think some of them are? Position of the patient. Where do you find them? How are they sitting? Okay, are they sitting upright on their couch in the living room? Okay, that's gonna be easy. All right, we'll just put them on the stretcher, no problem. Maybe they can walk. Maybe they're walking towards your ambulance when you pull up on scene. Are they laying unconscious and unresponsive in the middle of a yard? Are they in what we call the Bermuda Triangle of the bathroom? Because literally probably half of the cardiac arrests or significantly sick patients I have ran, everybody goes to the bathroom and they don't feel good, right? You don't know if you're gonna throw up, you don't know if you're gonna, have a number two, you just go to the bathroom and you don't feel well. If you're sitting on the toilet and that moment you pass out, it's always a tub's here, the toilet's here, and they fall in that itty bitty confined space. That's the Bermuda Triangle of the bathroom, all right? How are you gonna get a patient out there? How are you gonna get a patient out of a car? So the position that you find your patient, what else? Potential for injury, what goes into that? Okay, so maybe if we need to hold or secure a C-spine. What else? How else can the patient or yourself be injured when we're lifting and moving? Okay, so we've got to use proper body mechanics. We'll talk about that. What else did you say? Heavy patients. Okay, the average Grady size patient is at least 250. So that's around ballpark average. Okay, so you got to know what. So A, ballpark, how much that patient weighs, and also what else? Your capabilities.
Yeah, you got to figure out if you're going to have to call in extra help or not.
Right, you got to know how strong you are. And guys, it is not an ego thing. It's not a pride thing. It's not a, hey, let me show off. If you know, dude, there's no way that's going to happen, don't try it. Okay. So yeah, it's going to happen a lot. I was going to bring this up here, but the AMT students are working with all of them right now. But this is a stretcher. You're going to have one of these on your trucks. Make sure everything, guys, I talk about when it comes to equipment, there are all sorts of makes and models, right? When you get on with a service, when you get on with an agency, you have got to be 110% familiar with whatever make and model equipment that is you're going to be using day in and day out. Okay, so a gurney, sometimes some old school people still call this a gurney, but it's a bed with wheels on it, right? What are some things that we need to know about just an overall general composition of a stretcher? Okay, so how to bring it up and down. All right, so these legs right here, if they're in an X frame, like this one, because it looks like an X, or if they're in an H frame, where they go up and down, and they don't cross, they collapse, right? Depending on what make and model, there might be like maybe 3 different levels that stretcher can go, or it might just be, hey, it can go all the way up here, all the way to the ground, and everywhere in between. Okay, so the legs are collapsible. What else? They have weight limits, right? average weight limit for a normal sized stretcher is going to be around 600 pounds. Okay. Here at Grady, we do have what we call bariatric stretchers. And they can hold up to, I think, like 1250. Okay. They're also going to be wider to accommodate for the size of the patient. Okay. What else? Okay, so you see these safety straps, right? These are really, really important. We'll talk about those. Got some stories about those. Guys, there's going to be a head end and a foot end. The head end is always going to be more flexible in the positioning. It can go completely flat where you have the patient lying supine, or you can, in any degree, up to 90 degrees, sit the head of the bed up. Excuse me. Most of the feet end, they will elevate a little bit, but not as much as the head end. Okay, so either the appropriate position for the patient's condition or the position of comfort is how we want to place these patients on the stretcher. All right, guys, they have wheels on them. We got to be able to have it to be mobile, to go to and from the ambulance, to go pick our patient up. Most of the stretchers have brakes on the wheels. Don't trust those things. All right, you will find yourself, even if you have the locks on the brake, always use your foot to have it, to make sure that that wheel is not going to go anywhere. Kind of use your foot as a doorstop for all of the wheels.
Have you ever had a runaway patient?
A runaway patient or a runaway stretcher?
Yeah, well, a patient on the stretcher.
To a certain extent. It didn't cause any kind of injury, or like they didn't go flying down a hill, but we did. I thought my partner had the stretcher. My partner thought I had the stretcher. We were trying to open the doors to the back of the ambulance. We both let go.
Around the patient's gone.
It's just like, and we're like, oh no. So we caught it before it turned into anything.
Have you ever left the stretcher at the hospital?
No, I haven't. I've left it on scene. But that was for a valid organization. No. But guys, you would be surprised as to what happens with operator errors with this stuff. So again, you're not going to put your hands on the stretchers in class. You will do that when you go to the A class, but when you get hired on, you got to know the ins and the outs of every aspect of the stretcher you're using, because if it's operator error and you drop a patient, or a patient falls over, or whatever happens, that could mean your job. That could mean a lawsuit, because you got to know how to do your job, right? You got to know how to work your equipment. There are side rails right here. Typically the top part of the stretcher up here can collapse down to make it smaller, like say if you need to fit into like an elevator or something like that. For the most part, that's going to be in some way, shape, or form. They usually have a securing device for like oxygen tanks. But you will notice on every single part that makes it go up or down, makes the side rails come up or down, the headrest, everything that is red makes something move. Okay, so if you're needing to pick up the stretcher at a different height, you got to squeeze that red lever before it can move. If you don't need to squeeze the red lever, it can make something move unintentionally. So pretty much overall, general introduction. The mattress is going to be waterproof for obvious reasons. Guys, your stretcher is part of your equipment that you decon after every single call. Wipe down the stretcher, wipe down the side rails, the mattress pad, the seat belts. All of that comes in contact with your patient. Okay. So, just for you guys to get an idea, it's typically average stretcher itself, just the stretcher, weighs at least 75 to 150 pounds. Just the stretcher. All right. We have to combine that with the weight of the patient. Okay. What else is heavy that we have to carry and be responsible for?
The medical bag.
Your oxygen tanks, when they are full, they're about 10, 15 pounds apiece. Your jump bag, your little tote kit that's got all of your, first responding equipment in it, about 20-ish pounds. Your cardiac monitor, about 30 pounds. Okay, So all of this is going to start adding up. I'm not saying it's a requirement to go get a gym subscription, but you might want to start working on maybe like some squats, maybe some curls, because it is a very physically tasking job that a lot of people, that's just not something that they consider when they start thinking about EMS. Okay. Talk about that, talk about that. Talk about that. All right, so overall, just the makeup, the general features of a stretcher. Everybody good with that? All right, you will have different protocols based on where you work from your medical director that says which patients should and should not be ambulatory. What does that mean? Walk. Okay, so here at Grady, technically our protocol says, even if the patient's standing up ×4, if they're standing upright on scene, if they're sitting upright on scene, if they're walking around their kitchen on scene, if they have a complaint of chest pain, abdominal pain that we suspect something significant could be going on, even if they can walk, we put them on a stretcher. We don't want to walk them to the ambulance, right? So there are set protocols, I think at Metro, I believe. I think it's Metro. It doesn't matter what your complaint is. If you're walking on your own or not, every single patient gets placed on the stretcher. They can't walk any patients to the ambulance. Everybody has to be put on a stretcher. So be familiar with that, but this is something you are going to use several times every single shift you work. Okay?
Have you ever had anyone try to fight you about being on the stretcher?
Oh yeah. And I'm like, okay. Like if it's something where, hey, dude, no, you absolutely, like, you don't need to be walking, you have a broken ankle, whatever, then I'll really push for it. But if they are absolutely adamant and they're getting aggressive, I'm not getting on the stretcher. Okay, you're not getting on the stretcher. Come on, let's go. So you got to learn to pick your battles too. Know what to push.
Because I was wondering, because I don't know how strict some of the transportation services are, so that's why I was wondering.
Well, if it is breaking your protocol, right? If I have somebody who has chest pain and is adamant, I'm not getting on that stretcher, what do I do about that? Document it, right? EMS crew had multiple attempts to request patient be on stretcher, be secured on stretcher. Patient adamantly denied getting on stretcher. Patient became irritable and hostile due to patient safety and EMS crew safety. Patient was not placed on stretcher. Patient walked to ambulance. That's justifying why I did not do what my protocol said to do, right?
Okay.
Typically, there'll be an X-frame. Yeah. Yeah, so guys, we only have like 3 bariatric stretchers at Grady. They are not on any of the 911 trucks. They're always on the non-emergency transport trucks. So if you get on scene and you're like, the stretcher's not going to hold the weight, or the patient can't physically fit on the stretcher, you're going to have to call supervision at Grady anyway, and say, hey, we need to get the bariatric stretcher to our location, and they'll have to go track down where it is and bring it to your scene. All right, backboard. Okay, this right here is a backboard. Okay, we kind of talked about this maybe Monday about how we're starting to move away from the evidence-based research that we do as EMS, that these are not meant for every patient, right? We're actually causing more harm than good in most patients by placing them on a backboard, okay? Yeah, they don't make a bariatric backboard. This is one size fits all. Good luck with that. So guys, who might need to be...
How common is it that you have to call for another crew or somebody to come help you just get a patient out of the location or something like that? Say you've got, like you said, the toilet and the, tub, and the 300 whatever pound person, fell in that location, and it's just,
So you said how common is it?
Yeah.
It's fairly common, guys. Yeah. You know, because like I said,
You're not expected to, just get in there and do it. Like, people like, hey, look, we gotta, that's what I really like to know.
would
What's
you
that?
like a realistic answer?
Yes, I would.
So guys, I honestly, in a normal, ideal, everyday shift, no, it's not hard to get. Usually it's Fire to come out there and help you. But right now, with everything that's going on, you're kind of on your own. I am not, for the record, I am not trash talking. I am not downplaying anything about APD or AFD, but it is an objective fact that right now, with everything that's going on, Fire is not co-responding like they normally would to these calls. If it is anything that could possibly be medically at all related to COVID, they're not going. Unnecessary exposure, right? Usually, sans COVID, if it's a life-threatening emergency call, if it gets triaged like that, they automatically just get dispatched with us. They usually show up on scene with us. They clear it with us. Hey, you guys need us, or are we good to go? And we say, oh, actually, I need you. Can you come help me move this patient? Or no, we're good. Thanks. That's not happening right now. I will leave names out of this story.
Been a little
But
frosty in your house.
no, this is just in Atlanta. It's just in Atlanta. My husband, who is Fire, the county that we live in, the county he works for, they're still co-responding to everything. So again, that local protocol changes depending on each service. Huh? I'm sure there's probably a couple of other counties that might be doing it, but Atlanta for sure. A couple people that I know personally recently ran a call with a patient who was ballpark 600 pounds, was sedentary for so long they were actually becoming fused to the surface they had been lying on. And it was a 2-person crew that responded via ambulance. They called this, they let dispatch know, hey, this is my scenario. I really need some additional help. They dispatch called and asked Fire to respond, and they said they are not responding. So that crew had to figure it out. They made it work. They utilize bystanders and family members to help. So,
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, even 2 robust people, 600 pounds.
yeah. But yeah, so guys, another motto, I know one of the mottos that we talked about for EMS is smooth is slow, or slow is smooth, smooth is fast. Another big one is improvise, adapt, and overcome. So like that little excerpt I read you guys, well,
Just kidding.
from 1,000 Naked Strangers, expect no help. If we have it, it's great, but it's a privilege, not a expectation, right? So yeah, a lot of people do help, but then you got to keep into consideration too, guys, if you're utilizing bystanders or family members, they're not officially trained as to how to lift and move these patients. So just keep that in the back of your mind. Sometimes that's all you got, right? But like if they drop the patient or something like that, then it could possibly come back to you. Document.
So, like, if you call for a lift assist and no one showed up, it was like nobody didn't help you, so you attempted and then like slipped a disc. Is that just going to like regular workers' comp? Is that?
If you're talking about you hurt yourself or the
Yeah.
patient,
Yeah, like,
that's OJI on the job injury.
is it a courtroom?
It depends. Like if you're trying to milk, like if you say, oh, I have a hurt back and I'm going on OJI, pay me to not do anything and sit at home, and somebody catches you like at the gym or at Six Flags or something like that, then yeah, that can be a court case.
No, I mean, like, would that be like,
You're saying negligence on patient.
Yeah.
Like,
It depends.
You made it very clear.
It depends.
This is not.
But then they're gonna say, well, we didn't force you
Yeah, so
to pick up the patient. You did that on your own accord.
So.
We are need to be very familiar with these. You might not use them for every patient. We're not using them nearly as much as we did 10 to 15, 20 years ago. But with the protocols here at Grady, there are a set of specific indications that we would put somebody on a backboard. Okay, why do we put them on a backboard? To stabilize them, right? To lay them flat and to make sure that they're not moving around. All right, so who might be a candidate for a backboard? Okay, so the biggest one is if we suspect any type of spinal injury, right? If we have any type of abnormalities when we assess the neck and the spine, if we have, hey, I can't feel my legs, or anything that the patient's presenting with that would make me think the spinal cord has been compromised, then yes, I absolutely want to put them on here. Why? Yeah, keep them still to prevent further injury. Okay. Who else do you think might go on here?
like if they're unconscious, do you consider that?
Yeah. What if they're unconscious, unresponsive, and they can't tell me what hurts or what happened? Right. So we're going to put them on here as a precaution. Okay. If you are altered to the point where you can't effectively communicate with me, right? If you are under the influence of drugs or alcohol, this is just Grady protocol, okay? So don't think that this is universal, but I'm telling you guys this is universal. But here at Grady, if you're under the influence of drugs or alcohol and you can't communicate with me, I'm gonna put you on here as a precaution, okay? If you have what we call a distracting injury, what do you think that might be?
Broken arm.
Maybe
Is it
not.
where you're flailing around so much that you're gonna injure yourself?
It's where the pain can like take away from another thing.
So maybe like bilateral broken femurs, right? That's a very, very painful injury. Significant burns, something that might be visually disturbing to a patient, right? They might be focused so much on that pain or that, holy crap factor from that injury, they're not realizing, oh yeah, my back does hurt here. Okay, so if they have a distracting injury, we'll put them on here just as a precaution because they might not be able to effectively tell me that something else hurts if they're focused on the pain from that injury. All right. If we have to physically restrain a patient, we want to tie them down and secure them to a backboard. Why? So they don't fall off. So they're secure, but they're not going to fall off a stretcher. They're secure on a stretcher. On a backboard?
No,
Okay.
There
There can be. But guys, if you're tying them down to a stretcher, are you going to pick that stretcher up and say, here, hospital, here you go, you can keep my stretcher? No. When you transfer the patient from your ambulance, from your stretcher to the hospital, what are you going to have to do if they're secured to the stretcher?
Stretchers.
Untie them from the stretcher so you can transport for them to the hospital bed, right? So we secure physically, if we're physically restraining somebody, we do it to a backboard. So that way, when we get to the hospital, all we have to do is pick up the backboard, put that on the hospital bed, and we don't have to untie them in the process. Okay. Yeah. Who else? We'll go on here. About a cardiac arrest patient. If you're doing CPR on somebody, you need them to have a firm, flat surface. Again, we got to think about that transferring of the patient, right? We don't want to interrupt compressions like hardly ever at all. So if we're having to pick them up from the sheet and pick them up and move them from the stretcher, it takes away time from that. If they're on the backboard, somebody can continue doing compressions while we're moving them on the backboard to the hospital bed. All right. So what do you guys know about a backboard? Was it made out of all that stuff? What do you know? So it's a hard plastic. They used to be wooden, like straight up wooden boards. Why do you think they changed over the material?
hygiene.
More durable.
Hygiene. Go ahead.
No, I was saying I think it's probably because it's more durable.
More durable.
It's probably cheaper.
It's probably cheaper. Splinters.
X-rays.
Oh, okay, so splinters, yeah. But yeah, X-rays. Okay, used to, if you were on a wooden backboard or on a metal backboard, even if we suspected spinal compromise, we had to take you off of the backboard to put you through a CT scanner or an MRI or an X-ray, because all you would see if you scan the patient on that kind of material would be this backboard. You couldn't see through, the machine couldn't see through the material. You can with this. So we get better imaging. Okay. You'll notice again, guys, there's a head end and a foot end. All right, the head end is a lot wider, not a lot wider, but it is wider than the foot end. You'll notice it kind of comes down to a little bit of a point at the feet. And you've got all of these slots all around the board. What are these for? Okay, to use to secure the straps at any given point in the patient's body, and also for handles, right? So you can pick the patient up. You've got a bunch of different access points to pick the patient up, to move the patient. Okay. Again, guys, they don't make extra large backboards. This is as tall as they come, and this is as wide as they come. So I'm 5'5". All right, so anybody significantly taller than me, we're gonna have some spillage, right? They're not gonna fit totally on here. We'll talk about getting them secured on the backboard later, but yeah, they're, I don't know, maybe 10 pounds, maybe not that much. But yeah, this is your backboard. Those are some of the patients you will put on a backboard, because guys, it used to be, if you got a fender bender, right? And you've had any type of neck or back complaint or anything like that, even if you were upright walking outside of your car, nope, gotta put you on a backboard. You had a car wreck, put you on a backboard, put you on a backboard. Everybody got a backboard, right? But now, through the research, again, we will do a thorough assessment, even if it is, let's say it's a bad car wreck. That car looks like it got crushed, right? We are going to do a thorough assessment. If I don't see any indications that a spinal injury could be present, I don't necessarily have to put them on a backboard, right? So just know what it is, know why we might use it, and know that you need to be very well versed with it.
You guys have to do like a spinal therapy to that?
So we have to do our own version of that, yeah. So we ask the patients, you know, do you have any weird sensations in your upper or lower extremities? Can you move your fingers? Can you tell which foot I'm touching, type thing? We're gonna do our own palpation assessment. Because guys, if you bring a patient into the ER on a backboard, they're gonna stay on that backboard until the doctor comes. They do their own assessment and say, yeah, I think they're safe to come off the backboard, or no, let's send them to CT. So we do our own assessment to judge.
You have to do like the.
Well, no, we have to maintain C-spine. We don't move it around.
I mean, like when you're doing it.
Yes, to a certain extent. Yeah, we'll go over that. But yeah, we do that in moderation.
Instructor A.
Yes.
So you were talking about, with like physical restraint, like sending patients into the ER. You prefer to send them in on a backboard rather than a stretcher. But either way, the hospital still obviously holds on to that backboard for a long time. Is it just kind of like we'd rather them have the backboard instead of the stretcher?
So at Grady, we don't care about that, because guys, when you do clinicals and you go to the ambulance bay at Grady, there's like, we call it the rainbow wall. They're all different counties, backboards, there's different colors. So it's kind of like the, leave one, take one type thing. If we can get that patient off the backboard in, a safe manner, then we can take it with us. We'll wipe it down. They are reusable, right? You'll wipe it down with the cancer wipes. But if not, we'll just take somebody else's that got left there.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Why do you call this anyway?
You were not here for that, Dr. Do I have something to say?
Because they will give you cancer if you touch.
There's a lot of carcinogens in them. A lot of people handle them without gloves. Like if you do it like once every now and then, it's fine. But if like on a daily basis you're touching them, then they've been known literally to cause cancer. So wear your gloves. Use cancer wipes. Welcome to America. All right. Okay, let's talk about body mechanics. Guys, what is something that needs to be in place, something that needs to be done before we do any type of attempt to move or lift a patient?
We need to plan our feet properly.
Okay, so yeah, that's part of body mechanics, and that's definitely going to go into play. But before we're even physically starting to do stuff, all right, so we need to do a proper assessment, right, of our patient to make sure that we're doing the appropriate moving and lifting. You gotta have a plan, right? Make sure you know your physical capabilities, and you're not just trying to like show off for the cute new partner you just got paired with. Okay, know your physical abilities between you and your partner combined, right? Because I think I said one day this week, they don't place you together as partners based on your physical size, your gender, anything. You are literally a name and a scope of practice on a piece of paper. And if they need a BLS truck, oh, they're an EMT, they're partners. They don't know what you look like, right? So you could be like two big bodybuilders together on a truck. Great, good for you. You could be, you know, two tiny small people together on a truck. Kind of sucks. So just make sure that you're aware of your physical boundaries, your combined physical boundaries between your partner and the capacity of your patient, right? So that's going to determine if you need lift assist, right? If we're calling AFD, if we're calling another crew, maybe supervision's feeling really nice that day and they can come out there and help you. But if you've got even just you and your partner or a whole team there, you've got to have a plan, right? Why?
You don't want to hurt the patient or yourself.
Yeah, clear communication prevents injuries, right? Just because I have one idea as to how this is going to go doesn't mean everybody else is reading my mind. Doesn't mean everybody else is on the same page. Doesn't mean that somebody else doesn't have a better idea, right? So just say, hey guys, how do we want to do this? That's typically how you need to start out that conversation. Don't walk on scene and try to be a dictator and be like, you do that, you do that. All right, so just throw it out for conversation. Hey guys, what do you think is the best way to do this? All right, do you want to grab the head? Do you want to grab the foot? Do you want to go over there? Do you think we need to bring the stretcher here? Do you want to try to use a backboard? So bounce ideas off of each other, come up with a plan, and make sure that everybody is aware of their designated duty when it comes to moving these patients. All right, so just make sure you have a plan. That's super, super, super important. All right. So then when it comes to physically lifting the patient, make sure you're using proper body mechanics. All right. Make sure you're aware of your anatomy, right? What do we need to lift with? Your legs. Guys, this is sometimes a little bit challenging because especially if they're in that Bermuda Triangle, the bathroom Bermuda Triangle, right? We're going to have to lean over in some capacity to make access to that patient. But just make sure, if at all possible in an ideal world, we are lifting with our legs and we're not trying to lift or pull or push or do anything with your back curved over. Okay, because why do we need to lift with our legs?
That's the
Strong.
strongest part of our body.
Right, day in and day out, these bones and these muscles, they support your weight. Okay, your muscles are a lot bigger and a lot stronger in your legs, specifically in your quads and your thighs, than they are in your back, than they even are in your arms. All right, so just make sure we're lifting with our legs. Try to keep everything as in line as possible, especially when you're bending over. Make sure your back is as straight as it can be. You're not bending over at the waist. You're, going down in a nice straight line. Okay, so we talk about the power grip. All right, make sure, or the power position, your feet should be about shoulder width apart, maybe a little bit wider, but not really any more narrow, okay? Because you're not going to have as big of a, diameter or range when you bend down if they're super, super close together. All right, so feet shoulder width apart. Make sure your toes are pointing forward a little bit out. They're not like pointing inward or like totally out. It's not natural really for anybody, but make sure too that if you're lifting the backboard, the patient, the stretcher, you have got the bulk of that weight as close to your core as possible, right? You're not trying to lift all the way out here because again, use your core muscles, you can use your leg muscles, everything combines if it's closest to your core, all right? If you're picking up a patient with just your arms, maybe they're on a sheet, maybe they're on a stretcher or a backboard, always make sure that you've got your palms up, right? So here, if I'm picking up a patient with a backboard, my palms are up. I want to make sure the majority of the weight of whatever I'm picking up is right there in the middle of my palm. So that way I can wrap my fingers around it, and I'm going to have more leverage in my biceps if I'm picking up palm up. If you try to pick up like this, your triceps aren't as strong, your forearm muscles aren't as strong. That's what you're going to have to be using, and maybe some of your trapezius muscles to lift if you do, you know, the little Krabby Patty method. So make sure it's always palm up because your biceps are going to be the strongest arm in your upper extremity. Okay? Everybody with me so far?
Yep.
All right. So again, guys, when you bend down, try to keep everything in line as possible. Don't bend your back. Anybody go to the gym or know how to properly do a squat?
Yes.
That's ideally the position that you need to be striving for, right? Guys, you're going to be poking your butt out a little bit. It's okay. We're not doing, you know, the bend and snap type thing. But anybody? Legally blonde?
Yes.
All right, but you're not doing it to show off, but just that body position, you're gonna stick your butt out a little bit, go down, everything in place, in line, lift with your legs, close to the core, okay? So here you go, shoulder width apart, butt's kind of sticking out, their back is as straight as can be, they are both lifting palm up, it's close to their core, and what are they doing to one another? They're looking at one another. They have eye contact, okay? So just because you guys make a plan doesn't mean that it's going to go accordingly to that plan, all right? You always want to maintain verbal contact with your partner and eye contact with your partner, okay? Because what also needs to be done before you lift or move anything? So yeah, we need to secure the patient, we need to put the straps on, we need to put the seatbelt on. But before you start physically moving a patient, we got a plan. Yeah, we have to have verbal communication before we start moving, right? Now, guys, a lot to go into considering who's at what end of the patient / stretcher, okay? Where is the majority, the bulk of your weight?
The head.
Everybody's weight. Right here at your core, your torso, okay? So the head end of the patient is going to be the heavier end of the patient, no matter what their size or stature is. Well, maybe stature might go into account, but head end of the patient is going to be the heavier end of the patient. So you might want to have like a general understanding between you and your partner. Hey, I know you're stronger than me, so you grab the head end, I grab the foot end. Okay, delegate who's going to go where. All right. Typically, whoever is at the head end of the patient, who is at the head end of the backboard, the stretcher, whatever it is, they are going to be the one who is in charge of giving those verbal cues. Why?
Because they have more weight to handle when it comes to the lift.
You got more weight to brace. All right, that's a really important part of your patient, right? Your vital organs, your head, your neck, all that jazz. So yeah, if you're running the majority of that weight, you're going to be the one who's in charge of saying, okay, everybody ready, we're going to lift on the count of 3. Lift on 3, whatever, okay? 1, 2, 3. You're literally going to say that out loud. You might feel stupid doing it, but if you don't do it, I guarantee you you're going to have an injury, okay? Now, that being said, we typically call that person the head man or head woman, whatever you want to call it. Right? So on headman's count, if they're saying, all right, everybody ready, let's lift on 3, 1, 2, 3. Guys, if you're anywhere on, you know, the rest of the body of the stretcher or the patient and you're not ready to lift, say it. right? Hey, wait, hold on, I need to readjust my grip. Or hey, this fell over here, wait just a second. Because if they are just assuming, it's kind of like a speak now or forever hold your peace. If they're saying, hey, everybody ready? Everybody ready? I said that right. Okay, all right. I'm sure. Hey, is everybody ready? 1, 2, 3, let's go. If nobody interjects, everybody's gonna start lifting on 3, right? Guys, what's gonna happen if the head man is lifting that patient on 3 and the partner doesn't communicate that they're not ready to go? What's gonna happen?
You could possibly tip over the patient or,
The patient,
well, first of all, at the end where the feet are, the person that's not ready, they're actually going to have the little, the release trigger thing. It's not going to lift if they're not ready to hit the trigger.
the stretcher could collapse because again, you've got to move that lever to make the stretcher move. But if that head man who's supporting the weight here is just assuming that that weight's going to be evenly distributed and we're both moving in the same direction, and they're going to go on 3 and that person, the foot end's not going to go on 3, they're going to jack their back up, right? Because they're going to be pulling on all that weight and they're going to have resistance down at that end. So again, guys, headman's always going to be in charge of calling out the verbal cues, making sure everybody's on the same page, and keep eye contact with your partner just to make sure that communication is there, okay? Just to make sure you guys are moving at the same pace, all right? Because I don't want to go up super speed at the head ends, and then I've got, like Franklin the turtle down there at the foot ends moving super slow. Because the patient's going to get hurt, I'm going to get hurt. So keep that eye contact, you're moving at the same pace, we're going in the same direction, no problems, everything's good, nobody gets hurt, okay? Now guys, you will, if you work with a partner for a very long time, like I had a long-term partner, we worked for like a year and a half together, we got to the point where we were kind of in sync with each other, right? We would just always grab the same stuff every time. There wasn't a whole lot of like, hey, do you got this? Or hey, you got this? Or hey, you want to do this? We just kind of knew what each other were thinking. So we would just he would always grab the head end of the stretcher. I would get the foot end. We would look at each other. We would have like either like a nod or like an eyebrow flick. And then that was our counting out loud. Unless you work with a partner that long and you know each other's ways, count out loud, say everything out loud so everybody's on the same page and nobody gets hurt. Okay? It depends. Yeah, it's like Hollywood marriages. Like if you're together for 6 months, it's like forever. Because we just have so many different new employees. Status
I'm
changes.
just curious, but I think you said you had like some.
I was PRN for a while, so I worked with several different people on a different daily basis. But I had 2 or 3 long-term partners. I guess this is not the right way to lift people, right? What muscles are going to be used? Oh, that actually feels good. All right, you're back.
Your back muscles.
Okay, you're not bending the legs. You're going to have an injury. They're not looking at each other, All right, so just a little video to show it in action.
The situation that we're commonly faced with is picking a patient or an object up off the floor. Essentially, doing a deadlift every time we bend down. To get this done safely, the least amount of strain on our bodies, we'd like you to follow a couple of simple steps to get it done. First and foremost, we always want to get as close to the object as possible so that we don't have to lean forward at any time with a strain on our backs. We want a nice wide base of support, about shoulder width apart. Toes can be turned out ever so slightly. Feet can be firmly rooted to the floor. Make sure to heel down at all times as this engages strong hip muscles, taking load off of the spine. Always we need to have communication with our partner. Eye contact is key throughout the lift. We want to make sure that our abs are tight braced, ready to begin our lift, we're going to get into our safe position. I'm looking at my partner at all times, lower down to our lift position. Good grip on the board, shoulders come back, head is up, abs are tight. Ready? 1, 2, 3, lift. Come straight up. Either one of us has soft forward or back. Position well. Put the patient back onto the ground and do the exact same thing. Instead of starting at a very narrow base, forcing us to use our backs. 5 base of support, we toe out slightly. Nice firm roots to the floor, keeping our heels down. Eye contact with my partner. Head is up, shoulders back, abs are tight. Ready? 1, 2, 3, down. Excellent. By performing it in these simple steps, we are able to deadlift this patient any way we need to, safely and efficiently.
Okay, make a little more sense? All right. Body drag, again, sometimes guys, we don't have the ability to get the backboard into these tight spaces to what we call extricate or remove the patient from that situation. We can't fit the stretcher into this particular place. Guys, there are houses, especially that are built in like the 50s and 60s, the hallways are way too narrow. We can't physically like turn the stretcher to get it inside the house, all right? They don't fit everywhere. So you might have to be physically carrying a patient in some capacity to get them to a spot where the backboard fits or to a spot that the stretcher fits, all right? So body drag, look where we are, we're in that, right? Again, guys, this is going to be best served with you and your partner. Sometimes that's not feasible either because 2 bodies can't fit where this person is positioned. All right. So ideally, in an ideal world, we would have 2 people attempting these body drags. All right. And ideally, our patient has clothes on. They don't always have clothes on. A lot of them are naked. All right. So if they do have clothes on, if they have a belt or they have any type of pants, you can grab there at the waist. You can loop through the belt loop. But again, notice they're squaring up at what section of the patient's body? The trunk,
upper part.
right? The core, heaviest part. So if you can get up underneath the pits and hold right here at the waist, that's the heaviest part. That's going to be your best leverage. Sometimes it's just only the feet that you can access. Just grab the ankles and pull them out so you can better access them. Okay, because guys, we're not always in ideal situations. So again, you got to improvise a lot. Okay. Dragging a patient across a bed. We might have certain situations where a patient's lying in their bed, but we can't really get really good access to them, especially if they're in cardiac arrest, right? If we're needing to do CPR and we're doing compressions on somebody on a mattress, what are they doing?
You're bouncing.
We're just jumping up and down with them, right? We're not effectively compressing the heart because we don't have that resistance behind them. So we might have to move them off of a bed to the stretcher or to the floor, whatever it is. If they're on a bed, hopefully, ideally, they're laying on what? A sheet, right? Use the sheet to move the patient, okay? If it's a fitted sheet, just untuck it from the mattress. We can grab, the head end and the foot end if it's just you and your partner. Make sure when you use a sheet, you're pulling out all the slack from the sheet, right? You're gonna pull it towards you until you can't anymore. Kind of roll up the sides of the sheet so you've got a better grip and utilize that sheet to get the patient moved over. It's a lot easier moving them on that than it is trying to just pick up their physical body. Okay, we're going to talk about log rolling when we go over the backboard skill, because if you guys want to stick around for it after lunch, I think I will have time to show you guys the skill and demonstrate it. You guys can start practicing if you want. Again, guys, ballpark, you will get good at ballparking 2 different things: an educated guess, a patient's age and a patient's weight. Okay, so just make sure you guys are effectively, as best as possible, gauging the patient weight and your physical capabilities when it comes to moving these patients.
How often can you use 4 providers like it says? I mean,
Again, sans COVID, it's almost every call that you need fire, they're there. And guys, the fire stations around here, it's not like it's a small town. Bare minimum, it's a 4-man station. So each fire station has a minimum of 4 workers added. It can be up to like 10, right? So fire is understanding that they are typically there when it comes to medical calls. They're there for muscle. Because most firefighters, they don't get in to that career to run medical calls. What do they get into it for? To fight fire, right? To use their really cool toys to, do forced entry or cut people out of cars. That's their wheelhouse. That's what they get excited about. If they're showing up with you on a medical scene, unless they're, the exception to the rule, they are literally just going to stand around and wait until you tell them to do something. Or you will just find them inadvertently, they will just instinctively go and just pick up the jump bag and be like, hey, what do you need me to get for you? They don't really care so much for the medical calls. They're great to say, hey, do you mind doing this for me? And they'll comply, but they usually don't jump in and be like, how can I help you do medical stuff? They're just like, what do you need me to carry? Okay. So this is the diamond carry. Obviously, guys, if you have the resources there, use them, right? If you're questioning, I'm pretty sure we can pick this patient up. If fire's there or if another crew's there, hey, just really quickly before you guys go, can you help us move the stretcher? Okay, because more people is always better than less when it comes to lifting patients, right? Somebody's always going to be at the head end, somebody's always going to be at the foot end, but if you've got those extra 2 people, put them on each side. That weight is now more evenly dispersed between all of those people picking up and moving, less likely for an employee to get hurt or the patient to get hurt. So that's going to be the diamond carry. Again, notice we've got palms up, facing forward. This is a little bit different, right? You'll see it done this way, and you'll see it done where they're holding palms up and they're walking backwards. That can pose a little bit of a risk, right? Because unless you've got someone actively spotting that person who's walking backwards, hey man, you got a step coming up, or hey man, watch out for that pothole. What's going to happen if I'm walking backwards, not seeing where I'm going, and I trip over something? I'm going to fall. Now, unexpectedly, that weight of that part of the stretcher or the backboard or the patient is going to lose that slack. Nobody else is expecting that to happen, so they're going to fall. Like it's just a bad ripple effect. So you might see, especially if there's 4 people there, yes, I can support less weight this way, but I'm more safely transporting this patient because I can see what's in front of me.
So would you still pick it up a squat position?
Yeah, you would still pick up the actual patient with that power lift and then just kind of do a turnaround switcheroo when you start moving. Okay, everybody good with lifting on a stretcher, on a backboard, diamond carry, power grip, body mechanics, all that stuff. Okay, so let's talk about the stair chair. Love this thing / loathe this thing, okay? This is a stair chair. I'm gonna move the camera down for a little bit, guys, so you can see it. All right, this is a stair chair. We should have one of these on every single truck. This should be part of the equipment that you check on a daily basis. If it's not there, go beg, steal, borrow from another truck that's not going into service. We do it, ready? It comes folded up. I'm not going to fold it up and unfold it because that's the worst part of this thing is getting it popped out. But it comes folded up. It should be on one of the outside compartments of your ambulance. This thing, if you actually need to use it, it's great. Okay. What do you think we might use this thing for? Okay, so maybe when stairs are involved, because that's the name of it, right? Stair chair. What if we have that call? What if we have that patient who is on the 3rd floor apartment and their elevator doesn't work and they've broken both ankles and they can't walk. How are we gonna get them down? On this thing. Right, so how it works, guys, it will pop out. There are different levers that make it pop out and sit upright and lock into place. There are little seat belts on here, okay? So you will get your patient, if they can sit upright. You cannot use this if a patient is what? Unconscious, unresponsive. Guys, they can't just be like dead weight flopping in this chair. It won't support them. It won't secure them enough. They'll fall out, okay? If they are conscious and able to sit upright, you can use the stair chair. You'll get them to sit here. You'll take these little safety straps. You'll do crisscross applesauce, right? It's just like a seatbelt. It'll go diagonally over the patient's chest, and it will come down here on the lap belt and secure. All right, make sure this is nice and snug so the seat belts are in place. And then make sure there are brakes on here. Again, even if you got the brakes on, this is what I'm talking about when it comes to that foot with a stretcher as well. Even with the brakes on, just put your foot there for a door stop to make sure it's not going to roll in there, okay? These will, okay, this comes up higher. There are handles down here at the bottom that come out like that. There's a little footrest. Yeah, y'all can stand up and look if you can't see the back. Can y'all see it okay on Zoom?
Yeah, we can see.
There's a little footrest that comes down so they can place their feet there, and there's also a little cute little strap for the ankles down there that you would secure. Okay, so your patient's here. We are going to push it up to the top of the staircase, and then we're going to get these little tracks that pop out, and these are going to help us go down the stairs. You have to warn your patient that this is extremely scary. Even a backboard, when you guys do backboarding, if you pick somebody up that's on a backboard, it's very vulnerable. You feel like they're gonna drop you, right? So we will come to the point where we're at the top of the stairs, and we will say, hey, please keep your arms and legs inside the vehicle at all times, right? You are going to feel yourself tip backwards. It's gonna feel like we're gonna drop you, but we're not, right? Tell them, I don't need you to reach out or try to grab anything because that might make us actually drop you. So just keep your arms here, give yourself a big hug, let us do all the work, you're not gonna fall, right? So then we would actually tilt the patient backwards. We would have these tracks lined up with the incline or the angle of the staircase. And then that way we could just gradually push the chair down the staircase. Okay. It's again really useful for somebody who we have to go up or downstairs. But yeah, realize whoever is handling the foot ends, you're walking backwards. Okay. So you can maybe do a switcheroo, but because of the angle, you end up kind of like having to do this, and it's really hard. So if you're here at the head end, make sure you are telling your partner, you got 2 steps left. You got 1 step left. All right, now we need to move to, turn to the right or whatever it is. You've got to make sure that you're the eyes in the back of the head for your partner with this.
What's the weight limit on this?
Probably, I think it's like 350, something around there. What if you have a patient in a basement apartment? Okay, you can go upstairs with this. It's a lot harder because you're kind of having to pick up the weight and move it at the same time instead of letting gravity help you. But you can go upstairs with this.
Is there necessarily a weight limit?
So I think it's like around 3, maybe 350.
If you're taking it upstairs, do you actually still use the tray for that, or do you just lift
Mhm.
it and walk?
Oh, you're gonna use the tread, you'll still,
You'll tilt
tip
it
them back, but you're having to
Push,
kick
push,
and
push.
lift at the same time. So going upstairs is a lot harder.
Is there any resistance? Or that is something-
Going up, yes, but going down, the weight and gravity just kind of like let it just slide. Yeah, yeah. All right, so guys, what else could we use this for?
There's now passive care we talked about versus conscious, right? And that'd be really tough to do.
Glorified wheelchair, right? So we can use that as well. But yeah, this is the stair chair. Love it / loathe it. It's great for people who really need it, but it's just a pain to assemble and use sometimes. Okay. Everybody go to the stair chair? All right. I try to fix them.
Okay, I get that too. I don't resonate with
Okay.
Once you get someone down the stairs, you have to put that.
So this is just a transport tool. The stair chair is to get from point A to your stretcher. Once we make it to the stretcher, we will take them off the stair chair. We can maybe do like a manual lift to the stretcher. We might can get them to maybe like kind of scoot their butt on the stretcher, but ultimately they're going onto the stretcher. This is just to get them to that point.
So if they're unconscious and they have stair use, so you can have.
Yeah. Yeah, we're not gonna put it unconscious. Third patient or third floor apartment, not alert, not able to sit in an upright position. Stair chair is not an option, right? So what we would do is we would put the patient, secure the patient to the backboard, and then carry the backboard physically down the staircase.
Do you get an assist for that, or is it just
If they're available. Don't do like a sledding thing, right? Like don't feel like, all right, go to the bottom, let's catch them. Like don't.
Don't worry, the camera's on the side.
Yeah, no.
Has that ever happened?
Did I bring it up? Yes, it's happened.
I was saying like you can strap them down so they don't slide.
Yeah, you're physically going to strap them onto the backboard. All right, and guys, we can use the backboard as just simply an extrication tool, right? We can use it to try to get them out of that confined space, and then if they don't need to be spinally immobilized, then we'll just use this like we would a stair chair to get them to point A to the stretcher and just take them off the backboard, put them on the stretcher.
Is it common for medics or EMTs to like keep letting a rope on the truck and their jump pads to make these kind of things easier?
Not really. You do see some medics who will, it looks like a decorative thing, but they'll wrap their stethoscope in paracord. So, you know, it kind of looks cool, but then if you need it, you can actually physically like remove it from the stethoscope to use it for something like that.
You guys ever looked into the movers technology? Like you hire movers? Do you ever see the harness that they wear?
Like the elbow bend thing?
No, they have literally things now where it straps onto their waist, looks almost like a weightlifting belt, but then it's got loops that they can basically like throw a strap around something and attach it. It keeps it more secure, and then it can take weight off of like back and arms and put it all on your legs, basically.
Logistically, that would work, but that probably will never be here at Grady for liability purposes.
Yeah.
Because if something goes wrong, the patient falls, you're now attached to the patient, and that's going to be, yeah. But
No,
I've seen it, yeah, but yeah, probably never. Talk about that. All right, again, guys, you will get more hands-on stuff with this when you go through to A. You can ask your preceptor to show you how to work the stretcher when you get to clinicals. But what normally happens with the ambulances and the stretchers is you kind of have to lift up the stretcher a little bit, and then you just kind of push the legs will collapse, right? We have to pull that lever, the legs will collapse, and you just push the ambulance or the stretcher into the back of the ambulance. There's an anchoring system in the bed of the floor of the ambulances where you have to kind of have it catch, and it will lock it in position, so that way it's not just like fishtailing every time your partner takes a left turn. It locks in place. Once you hear that click, once it locks into the anchoring system, we call it the Grady jiggle, especially here at Grady. Do a little jiggle to the stretcher to make sure it's actually locked in and it didn't give you like a false, yeah, it's kind of locked, but not really, to make sure it's not going anywhere. Been there, done that. It will really, you think the razor scooters hurt your ankles? Stretchers. All right, so everybody's clear. We've got a team leader. That's usually going to be the head man. We've got to have a plan before we start moving. Talk about if anybody else has another plan. Make sure everyone's aware of their role when we're moving and give those verbal cues. Hey, everybody ready? Okay, let's go on 3. Everybody go with that? Anybody want to watch what happens when you don't have a plan / appropriate space?
Of course.
Definitely. Hey, about it. Hey, about it.
No. Hold on. Well, baby.
What's that? Oh, that's me. Wow. Certainly think a lot of yourself. Oh, that's my arm. I thought you just really liked your new couch. No, just follow my lead. Okay. Come on. All right. Here we go. All right. Ready? Turn. 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 Oh, yeah. Well, come on. Up. Here we go. Head back. Head back. Okay, I don't think it's going to pivot anymore. All right, let's bring it back down and try again. Oh. Okay, yeah, I think it's stuck. I can't believe that didn't work.
I know, me neither. I mean, they had a stitch.
All right, so guys, a little bit of comic relief here, but you need to understand sometimes if you have a plan and you're trying to execute that plan, it's not going to work, right? You might run into that problem. You might need to reevaluate and change up your approach. So, yeah. All right, so emergency moves. I forgot my watch, baby, it's killing me. There are different types of emergency moves. So there's a lot of, this is a confusing definition between emergency and urgent move. All right, technically an emergency move is when your scene is not safe. Okay. Should you be performing any emergency moves out in the field?
No, because you shouldn't have gone to the same.
No, because your scene's not safe. All right, this is talking about if your patient is either confined or kind of stuck in like a car that's about to catch on fire, or in an apartment with maybe like a chemical exposure, something like that. If you need to immediately remove your patient from that scene because it's not safe, you will technically do an emergency move. Do I ever want to see any of you do an emergency move in the field? No, you shouldn't be there to begin with if your scene is not safe, right? But again, if you're in that situation, you're going to do what you're going to do, but I do not advise for it, and I don't, your scene saved you at the end of the day. All right. So when we're doing these emergency moves, am I really caring about making sure I'm holding C-spine and not moving their back and, you know, all of that type thing? No. Okay, it's gonna be like a life or limb thing. So I'm literally going to grab and drag in any capacity I can. I'm not gonna have the luxury to take the time to do a little bit of an assessment first and say, okay, well, we've got this, we really need to keep them straight. Let's put a C-collar on first, all that stuff. I don't have that time, right? So I'm literally grabbing and dragging and we'll figure out the rest later when I remove that patient from that imminent danger, all right? So close drag, blanket drag, arm drag. Guys, anything you can get your hands on that you can feasibly access your patient, okay? Again, you might have, if you're in the situation, some adrenaline coursing through your veins, you might have a little bit of extra strength than you normally would, but that's the best, the most ideal way, right? You'll come up underneath the patient's armpits, you'll cross their arms, and then either have a crisscross grab or grab right there at each individual wrist, and then grab. Again, you're pulling at you have the leverage at the heaviest part of the patient's body. Grab their clothes, grab their arms. If they're conveniently lying on a blanket or a sheet in a burning car, grab the sheet and move them on the sheet. It's not really gonna be like that. Okay. Yeah, guys, anything you can grab, just get them out of the situation so we can better access the patient and remove them from the hazard. An urgent move is going to technically be defined as you getting that immediate access and removing the patient from that scene because your patient's not stable. Okay, so if your patient's sitting in a car and they're not breathing, they're blueberry face, right? They're super cyanotic because they don't have oxygen in their blood. I don't have enough time, or maybe, let me give a better example because you can technically bag somebody like that. Somebody's laying in the Bermuda Triangle of death, right, in the bathroom. They're blue, they're not breathing. I can't get to the head of my patient to breathe for them, right? The toilet's not about to explode, right? It's not a scene safety issue, but I physically can't access my patient to provide appropriate care. So I will do a drag. I'll get my patient out of that particular area into an area where I can get to the patient's head and access their airway and breathe for them. Okay, so emergency move is you're getting immediate, removing the patient any way possible because the scene is not safe. Urgent is because your patient is unstable and you can't, with the position that they're in, provide patient care. Everybody okay? The different definitions? Guys, non-urgent moves, again, you might have to physically pick your patient up, right? You can do the fireman carry, right? You can say, hey, partner, you grab the legs or the knees, I'll grab up underneath the armpits. There's a lot of different approaches to that. There's not really, I'm gonna say, hey, do this every time because you're just gonna have to improvise based on your patient, your partner, the situation. It shouldn't be a case-by-case basis. Geriatrics, okay, so we have some other things to consider. There are certain conditions of the spine, the spondylosis or kyphosis. How does this happen? Okay, so maybe improperly positioned for a long period of time. What else? How do you, what helps you stand upright? Spine and your muscles. What happens to your muscles the older we get? Atrophy. So they're not as strong. Okay, it's more of an effort to stand up and have that upright posture. So we start to kind of lean over, and once we're in the spot for a little bit, our body gets used to it, and we have that little old lady hunchback, right? Or you could be something, yeah, you could just be a slouchy person. Or, you know, scoliosis, anything like that. But how is this patient going to fit on a backboard? Ouch, right? Because where's all of that body weight going to go? Right there. Okay, so there's a step in this, the backboarding skill that we'll talk about. It's called padding the voids. So if you absolutely have to put a patient like this on a backboard, you're going to get pillows, sheets, towels, whatever is available, and you're going to stuff them underneath the spots, the void spaces between the patient's body and the backboard to try to distribute the weight a little bit better. Okay. Bariatrics, again, guys, this is a technical term for a significantly obese patient. Please use medical terminology when it comes to this. Do not refer to them as SHAMU. Do not refer to them as cows. Okay. Also be aware that with the way you communicate that you need maybe a bariatric stretcher or additional assistance needs to be tactful. All right. Especially if you're going over the radio to let dispatch know, hey, we need some lift assist. We got a really fat patient over here. Or we got SHAMU over here. Can you send us another crew? Who else has a radio on scene? Your partner. What if your partner is standing right next to the patient and family members while you step away and have that nice little comment about what you guys need? Think that's happened before? Yeah.
Is there a code that you guys have? Like, we've got a code, green.
There's not really a
37.
code. We just say, hey, we've got a bariatric stretcher. We need lift assist. Okay. Now, again, know your patients, your boundaries, all that jazz. But what if you have a bariatric patient who is sitting on scene and be like, dude, why are you taking so long? I don't feel good. I need to go to the hospital. Why are we still sitting here? How do you handle that conversation? What do you guys think?
We're doing everything we can.
Got to be what as possible? You got to be polite as possible. So how is the best way you think it would be to word what's going on to your patient?
Sir, we just need to be able to move you safely, and for that reason, we need to bring some empathy point so we make sure we don't make the situation worse. And we're going to do it right the first time and get you there.
Ding, 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 ding. You don't need to say, well, you're too heavy. I can't lift you by myself. Or lay off the Big Macs, or I could have taken you to the hospital already. All right. Common sense, right? Make it a safety issue because are you lying? No. Okay. Sir, ma'am, my partner and myself, we can't safely lift you by ourselves. So we're going to have somebody else come out here to help us so we don't injure ourselves. We don't want to drop you, right? Like you can kind of joke around, but just say, we want to keep you safe. We want to keep us safe. And between the two of us, we can't do that right now. So we're having some other people come help. Okay. They might be okay with that explanation. They still might be angry, but make sure that you are using appropriate, professional, tactful verbiage when it comes to that. Okay. So again, here's an example of a bariatric stretcher. It's got a higher weight capacity and it's physically going to be wider. Because guys, you might have a patient who might not exceed the weight limit, but physically won't fit on your stretcher because of the width of the patient. All right, so keep that in mind as well. You might need a bariatric stretcher for that. Guys, there is something else. Maybe did they bring it back? Somebody stole it at one point. There is a device called a mega mover. That is literally what it's called. That is the appropriate terminology for it. That is something, if you can't fit an obese or a bariatric patient on a backboard and you're having to move them from point A to point B, you can utilize the mega mover. Fire usually carries the mega movers. We don't typically have them on the trucks. Unfortunately, it looks like a big tarp with a bunch of handles all around it. So that is an additional piece of equipment that you can use to move a bariatric patient. Please don't call it the well tarp. call it a mega mover. And just when you're asking for lift assist, just be like, preferably fire, because we're probably going to need the mega mover. Okay. Don't say, hey, get fire out here, we need the well tarp.
So like,
Yes, I can't make this up.
Yeah, I was gonna say, that sounds awfully
This has
specific.
happened. Okay.
Is that like you see movies or somebody jumping from a window?
Kind of, sort of. Yeah, it's got like, there's a whole bunch of handles. It's not like inflatable,
No, I get it.
but yeah, it's kind of the same concept.
How do you do it all?
Roll them,
How?
stow it up underneath them, roll them over, pull it out, and then lay them flat. You can do it in a controlled manner. You might see these maybe somewhere else other than EMS. Yeah, in the military. There's a couple of them in a video we're going to watch in just a few moments. But they're portable cots, portable stretchers. They fold up. We don't use them. But there's all sorts of different equipment that you can use. There's a flexible stretcher, a basket stretcher. You're typically going to see this if you need like an air lift. If it's like a terrain issue that you can't get your truck to the patient and they need like to be lifted, removed from that, usually like via helicopter or crane or something like that. We don't have those at Grady. We would have to call in extra resources to get those. This is called a short backboard or a KED. We will talk about this later in a different chapter, but this is a device you can use. Vacuum mattresses, they kind of inflate around the patient. Again, basket stretchers, notice we're on a mountain. All right, so this is typically because we need an extrication due to terrain. They'll use a basket stretcher, they'll get them on the ground, we'll put them on a regular stretcher, then we'll go to the hospital. Scoop stretcher. All right, we're gonna go over this really quickly. Okay, this is a, this is a scoop stretcher. When do you think we might use one of these? It comes apart here and at the bottom, so it breaks apart into two pieces. All right, these literally are curved. Okay, head goes here, feet are down there.
Roll this way, that, roll that way.
And there's a very confirmed spinal injury. So that you can
Spinal injury?
do some more.
Okay. So yeah, guys, we are going to utilize this. This is going to be like the stair chair. It's going to get us from point A to the stretcher, or from point A to the backboard. We won't keep this on the patient for the duration of transport. All right. But these are for patients who we don't want to roll. Because how are we going to assess if the patient's lying supine? How are we going to assess to see if they have a suspected spinal injury? We're going to roll them. All right, we can do that in a controlled manner. We'll talk about that when we get back from lunch. But who is somebody we might not want to roll?
Pelvis crush.
An unstable pelvis. Why?
Because you can
Irritate the injury.
Bones are sharp when they break. What do we have that bifurcates right here, goes through the pelvic girdle to each leg? We've got arteries. We've got that iliac crest. We've got those femoral arteries. If we roll a patient who doesn't have a stable pelvis onto one side, if it's not stable, typically a pelvis is stable. If you roll it onto one side, the structure is going to remain intact, right? Because it's a circle, the pressure gets put on itself. But if you have an unstable pelvis and you roll, it's not going to be able to support, and what's going to happen? It's going to crunchy crunch. You can kill a patient by doing that. You never, ever, ever, I'll go over again this again in trauma, you never roll an unstable pelvis. You never roll an unstable pelvis. All right. So we still got to get those patients onto a backboard, onto a stretcher, right? So we're going to use a scoop stretcher. We're going to scoop up on one side. We're going to scoop up on the other side, put those back together. Now we can lift them, walk them over here, and place them on a backboard, place them on a stretcher. We don't have to roll them to get them onto the backboard. Okay? Yeah, so you just kind of like let it kind of like scoop underneath, and then pick it up. Who else might we want to use for that? Think of somebody else we might not want to roll onto one side or the other. Maybe.
Crushed extremities.
What about bilateral significant fractures? Like if I've got bilateral femur fractures, do I want to roll my patient on top of a broken femur? So what do I have here? Again, femoral arteries. I've got those great vessels. I can lacerate them. Okay, so if you have bilateral extremity fractures, particularly the lower extremities, because we can maybe manipulate the arms that we won't roll it on top of that arm. But technically, bilateral extremity fractures or injuries, we don't want to roll them onto an injury. We can use a scoop stretcher to get them on the backboard. Huh? Yep. And guys, the beauty of this too is once we pick them up, what do we notice is right here? A void space. So when we have them picked up, even though we can't roll them, I can still assess their spine to see if there's any abnormalities in their spine. I'll notate, yes, there is, no, there's not. Put them on the stretcher, put them on the backboard. I can still assess the posterior part of my patient with the scoop stretcher. Those are great to use on patients. A lot of people forget we keep them on the truck, but they're a really, really good tool for the patient to qualify for them. Okay. Again, guys, wipe your stuff down, clean it to the point where you would be okay getting on the stretcher, getting on the backboard. We'll talk about that later. All right, let me see where we are. We might need to take 10 minutes to finish up this backboard. One more slide. Okay, so let's go and finish up. Literally 10 more slides. Okay. All right. So guys, again, like we talked about, if you were physically restraining a patient, you will do it onto a backboard, not onto a stretcher. So we don't have to worry about untying the restraints from the stretcher to move them over to the hospital bed. Okay. Typically, we try to do maybe one arm up here, one arm down here. You can do both arms down here, but sometimes they get a little bit more leverage to try to bust out through those restraints. Never, ever, 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 ever place a patient in what position? What's that called? Prone. Okay, if you're physically restraining them, they should be supine. You are transporting them for any other reason, if they're on a backboard or not, they are supine. The only exception is if what? The only time you can ever consider placing your patient prone or anything close to it.
Impalement in the back?
Yeah, if you got something sticking out of your patient's back. Okay, we would improvise in that situation, but in no other case should you ever place a patient prone, especially if you're restraining them. Everybody clear on that? Why not? Airway, suffocation, wrongful death suit. Okay. I don't know, this is one or two videos. I don't know which one. Okay. They'll be these people.
Actually, this is my favorite.
I'm gonna try to pick up with this. Not being trained.
No.
Oh.
I've got something.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, teacher.
They're not looking at each other, they're not facing each other. Disaster. Literally walked opposite directions. Wait for it. That's actually a door. Like there's the door handle right there. Here we go. Not ideal. This is absolutely horrible, horrible, horrible.
Oh my gosh.
That's a real life call.
Oh my.
Everybody clear on what not to do? Yeah, guys, you'll find that the little comedy videos I throw in here are what not to do. I do give the like, hey, this is how it actually works, but yeah, don't do that. Questions, comments, concerns on the lecture portion? Okay. Everybody in Zoom land good?
Yep, we're good.
For the video where they were walking into the hospital
Mm-hmm.
and oh man, I forgot the word of it. I forgot the name. The cart. I don't remember the name right now.
The stretcher?
Yes, that. It kind of fell to the side and the patient was hit and fell into the door.
Yep.
For an emergency situation, what would be the best way for them to carry the patient into the hospital?
So you noticed in that clip, how many people had their hands on the stretcher? One. At all times, you and your partner should both be handling the stretcher. Had that headman been up there and helped steer and help control the momentum of the stretcher, that wouldn't have happened. So you never need to be pushing or steering or pulling or doing any type of movement with the stretcher with just one person.
Yeah, because basically we're not supposed to take our hands off the stretcher until we get to our destination, essentially.
Right. Okay. Okay. I'm going to end the recording.